I was 30 seconds away from taking a bite that would have killed me, all because I thought a desperate old woman was out of her mind. My name is Preston Vance, and what happened on March 15th in downtown Minneapolis should have been just another bad day in a string of bad days. Instead, it became the day I learned that death can hide in a turkey sandwich, and salvation can come from someone everyone ignores. The woman who saved my life was Geraldine Hutch, though she told me to call her Jerry. 73 years old, silver hair tucked under a faded purple knit cap, wearing a coat that had seen too many winters. Her hands shook when she grabbed me, not from fear or cold, but from the early stages of Parkinson's that she'd been managing without medication for 2 years. Those trembling fingers wrapped around my wrist with the strength of someone who knew exactly what was at stake. "That sandwich is poison," she whispered, her blue eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "I watched him put something in it. Please, you have to believe me." I laughed at first. Actually laughed, because what else do you do when a homeless woman you've just given $20 to starts talking about poisoned food? The turkey club from Benson's Deli sat heavy in my hand, wrapped in white paper, smelling like bacon and comfort. I'd been eating the same sandwich from the same place for 5 years. Roderick, the owner, knew my order by heart. Extra bacon, honey mustard, toasted wheat bread, lettuce, and tomato on the side because I was particular about how I added them. 20 minutes later, I was standing on the same sidewalk watching paramedics load a body into an ambulance. The white sheet covered Marcus Tillman completely, but I could see his wife Jennifer collapsing against a police officer, her 2 kids standing there not understanding why Daddy wasn't moving. Marcus had bought a roast beef sandwich from Benson's 15 minutes after I left. He ate it in his car while his family waited. 3 bites were all it took. The sandwich in my hand, the one I'd been ready to devour, was later found to contain enough synthetic tetrodotoxin to kill a healthy adult in under an hour. The police said it was colorless, odorless, and completely undetectable without laboratory testing. They also said the only reason they found it was because someone had stopped the person responsible before more damage could be done. That someone was Jerry, the woman everyone walked past every single day without a second glance, the woman whose warnings were dismissed by 3 other customers that morning, the woman who saved my life with those shaking hands and desperate eyes that I almost ignored. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how a chemistry professor ended up homeless on Franklin Avenue, and how an unemployed software developer became the key witness in Minneapolis's most shocking poisoning case, you need to know what happened that morning when everything in my life was already falling apart, and the $20 in my wallet meant choosing between eating and helping a stranger. You need to know why I stopped, why I listened, and why those 30 seconds between her warning and my decision changed everything. Because sometimes the difference between living and dying isn't about strength or speed or even luck. Sometimes it's about recognizing that the person society tells you to ignore might be the only one really paying attention. The rejection email from Technova Industries arrived at 9:47 a.m., right as I walked out of their gleaming downtown office building. We've decided to move forward with other candidates whose experience more closely matches our needs. 3 interviews, 2 coding tests, and a presentation about improving their system architecture, and all I got was a template response that probably took someone 5 seconds to send. That made it 3 rejections this month, 7 since the startup I'd worked for went under in January. I stood on the sidewalk checking my bank account on my phone, already knowing what I'd see but torturing myself anyway. $342. Rent was due in 12 days. $800 I didn't have. My sister Melody had texted me 4 times that morning about helping with her kids' school supplies, and I kept leaving her on read because admitting I couldn't afford to help my own niece and nephew felt like swallowing broken glass. The walk to Benson's Deli took 15 minutes, but I'd been making it for so long my feet knew the way without thinking. Past the courthouse where lawyers in expensive suits rushed around looking important, through the small park where office workers ate lunch when the weather was nice, down Franklin Avenue where the buildings got older and the people looked more tired. Benson's sat on the corner like it had since 1987, red brick facade with a hand-painted sign that Roderick touched up every spring. "Preston, my friend," Roderick called out the moment I pushed through the door. The bell above it played the same 3 notes it always had, slightly off-key but familiar. Let me guess. Turkey club, extra bacon, honey mustard, lettuce and tomato on the side. "You know me too well," I said, managing a smile despite everything. Roderick was already moving, his thick hands working with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been making sandwiches for 30 years. "You look tired, son? The job search?" Another rejection. They loved my ideas right up until they didn't. "Their loss," he said, slicing tomatoes with precise movements. "You'll find something. Good people always do." I wanted to believe him, but good people were sleeping in their cars all over Minneapolis. Good people were standing in food bank lines. Being good didn't pay rent or fix the check engine light that had been glaring at me from my dashboard for 2 months. Behind Roderick, I noticed someone new working the prep station. Skinny kid, maybe 22, nervous energy radiating off him like heat. He kept glancing over his shoulder while he worked, hands moving quickly over several sandwich orders. "New hire?" I asked. "Colton. Started on Monday. Kid's got a chemistry degree, can you believe it? Says he's just making money while he figures out grad school." Roderick shook his head. These young people with their fancy degrees working in delis. "No offense to you, Preston." "None taken. We all do what we have to." I paid for my sandwich, counting out the bills carefully. $27 left after this. The comfort food was a luxury I couldn't afford, but some days you need something familiar to keep from completely falling apart. The weight of the sandwich in my hand felt substantial, real, unlike everything else in my life that seemed to be evaporating. Outside, the March air bit through my jacket. That's when I saw her. The woman sat against the brick wall about 10 feet from Benson's entrance, a piece of cardboard propped against her knees. "Anything helps, God bless." The words were written in careful black marker, the letters still sharp and clear like the sign was new. She wore a purple knit cap over silver hair that might have been white underneath the city dirt. Her coat was army green, patched in places with different colored fabric, but clean. That struck me as important somehow, that she'd taken the time to keep it clean. Her hands were folded in her lap and I could see them trembling slightly. She didn't call out to people passing by, didn't shake a cup or make eye contact. She just sat there, existing, waiting. Something about her jawline reminded me of my grandmother Opal, who'd raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. Same determined set, same way of holding her chin up even when everything was falling apart. Grandma Opal had died 2 years ago, and I still found myself picking up the phone to call her when things got bad. I pulled out my wallet, looked at the 20 and the 7 ones. The 20 meant gas in my car for another week. It meant being able to grab coffee for a networking meeting if I got one. It meant not having to walk the 4 miles to my sister's house when she inevitably needed help with something. But the woman's hands kept shaking, and her sign's careful letters seemed to matter more than my gas tank. "Here," I said, holding out the 20. "Get something warm to eat." She looked up at me then, and her eyes were the clearest blue I'd ever seen. Jerry took the $20 bill with both hands, studying it like she needed to make sure it was real. Then she looked at my face with those piercing blue eyes, really looked like she was memorizing every detail. "You're a good soul," she said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in her hands. "What's your name?" "Preston," I told her, shifting my weight, ready to move on. "Preston," she repeated slowly, almost tasting the word. Then her gaze dropped to the sandwich bag in my hand, and everything changed. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. She lunged forward, her trembling fingers wrapping around my wrist with shocking strength. "Don't eat that sandwich!" Her voice cracked with raw urgency, Please, throw it away now." I pulled back instinctively, but her grip tightened. "Lady, what are you talking about?" "I saw him. The young man who works there. He did something to your food." Her eyes darted between my face and the sandwich, wild with fear. "Roderick. He's been making my sandwiches for 5 years. He would never—" "Not him?" The other one, skinny, nervous, kept checking over his shoulder. "He put something in several sandwiches this morning. I watched through the window." My mind flashed to Colton, the new hire working the prep station. The kid had seemed jumpy, but I'd written it off as first-week nerves. "You're saying Colton poisoned my sandwich? That's insane. Why would he do that?" "I don't know why, but I know what I saw." Jerry's voice dropped to a whisper. "He had a small vial, clear liquid. He was very careful, very methodical. 3 drops in specific sandwiches, then he photographed the receipt tickets with his phone." A chill ran down my spine, but logic kicked in immediately. This woman was homeless, possibly mentally ill. She could be having a paranoid episode. Maybe she'd overheard something and her mind had twisted it into something sinister. I'd worked downtown long enough to know that street life could break people in ways that made reality negotiable. "I appreciate your concern, but I think you might be mistaken," I said, trying to gently pull my arm free. "You think I'm crazy." It wasn't a question. She released my wrist and sat back against the wall. "Everyone does. That's why he picked this place. Who's going to believe the homeless woman?" My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with my free hand, expecting another rejection email or Melody asking about money again. Instead, it was a text from my brother-in-law, Shane Kurtz. Shane was a detective with Minneapolis PD, and we rarely talked outside of family gatherings. "Hey, can you call me? Got a weird case involving poisonings at local delis. Might need your tech skills to track some digital evidence." The words seemed to hover in front of my eyes. Poisonings, delis, plural. Jerry must have seen something change in my expression because she leaned forward again. "Your phone just buzzed about poisonings, didn't it? I can see it in your face. How could you possibly know that?" "Because I've been watching this corner for 3 months. I see patterns others miss. That boy has been here 5 days, and he's done the same thing each morning. Arrives early, before the owner. Always carries a messenger bag that he takes into the bathroom first thing. Always works the prep station even though he was hired for register. Always photographs certain orders." I sat down beside her on the cold concrete, my knees suddenly unsteady. "Tell me exactly what you saw this morning." He arrived at 6:45. Roderick doesn't get here until 7:15. I watched him unlock the door with his key, go straight to the bathroom with his bag. When he came out, he had something in his hand. Small, like a bottle of eye drops. He prepared 3 sandwiches for the morning rush orders, the ones people call ahead for. 3 drops in each one, then sealed them up. Very precise, very careful. "Why didn't you call the police?" She gestured at herself with a bitter smile. "With what phone? And who's going to believe the homeless lady who says she saw someone poisoning food? They'd assume I'm trying to cause trouble for the business that won't let me use their bathroom." I called Shane immediately. He answered on the first ring. "Preston, perfect timing. Can you—" "I'm at Benson's Deli on Franklin," I interrupted. "Something's wrong here, very wrong." "Don't eat anything from there." Shane's voice went sharp, professional. "We've had 3 hospitalizations this week, all traced to different delis. We think someone's testing a new synthetic poison. The victims all ate sandwiches from various shops around downtown." I looked at the wrapped sandwich in my hand, then at Jerry. She was watching me with those clear blue eyes, no trace of madness in them now, just a terrible understanding. "Shane, I think I know who's doing it, and I'm holding one of the poisoned sandwiches right now. Don't move. Don't let anyone else eat anything from there." I'm 8 minutes out. I stood up, my mind racing through the implications. 3 hospitalizations. Shane said 3 people were already in the hospital, and here I was, holding what might be evidence of attempted murder. Inside Benson's, I could see Roderick cheerfully serving a family of 4 through the window. The father was reaching for his wallet while 2 kids bounced excitedly beside him. "We need to stop anyone else from eating here today," I told Jerry. "Come with me." "They won't listen to me," she said, but she stood up anyway, tucking the $20 bill carefully into her coat pocket. "They'll listen to both of us." I pushed through the door, the familiar bell sounding ominous now. Roderick looked up with a smile that faded when he saw my expression. Behind him, Colton froze at the prep station, a knife suspended over a tomato. "Roderick, you need to stop serving food, right now." "Preston, what's going on? You're scaring my customers." He gestured to the family, who were now staring at us with concern. "There's been a contamination," I said, choosing my words carefully to avoid panic. "My brother-in-law is a detective. He's on his way here now. Nobody should eat anything until he arrives." "That's ridiculous," Roderick said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. "I run a clean kitchen. We follow every health code." Colton set down the knife with a soft clink. "Maybe we should listen to him, Mr. B. Better safe than sorry, right?" His voice was steady, too steady, like he'd rehearsed this moment. I watched Colton's hands. They weren't shaking. Someone who'd just been accused of poisoning food should be nervous, defensive, confused. Instead, he was calm, already untying his apron with methodical movements. "You seem pretty ready to shut down," I said to him directly, "almost like you were expecting this." "I just don't want anyone to get sick," Colton replied. His eyes flicked toward the back exit, measuring the distance. Jerry stepped forward then, her trembling hand pointing at Colton. "I saw you this morning. You came in early. You put something in the sandwiches." Colton's composure cracked for just a second, his eyes widening before he caught himself. "This homeless woman is clearly disturbed. You're going to believe her over me." "The homeless woman," Jerry said quietly, "has a Ph.D. in chemistry from the University of Minnesota, and I know what careful laboratory technique looks like, even when it's being used to poison people." The silence that followed felt electric. Roderick looked between us, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and growing horror. The family had backed toward the door, the mother pulling her children close. "Everyone out," I said firmly. "Now." Colton moved then, quick as thought, darting toward the back exit. But I'd played football in high school, and despite the desk job and the extra pounds, muscle memory kicked in. I caught him at the door, slamming my shoulder into his midsection and driving him into the wall. His messenger bag flew off his shoulder, skidding across the floor. "Get off me!" he screamed, struggling against my grip. "You can't prove anything. This is assault." "The vial in your bag might prove something," I said, pinning him against the wall. "Or your phone with the photos of the receipts, or the lab tests on this sandwich I'm holding." Roderick had ushered the family outside and was standing at the front door, holding it open as sirens grew louder. "Preston, what the hell is happening in my deli?" Shane burst through the door with 2 uniformed officers, their hands on their weapons. "MPD!" Nobody move. "This is him," I said, still holding Colton against the wall. "Check his bag." One officer took Colton from me, cuffing him while Shane pulled on latex gloves and carefully opened the messenger bag. Inside, wrapped in bubble wrap, were 3 small vials of clear liquid and a notebook filled with chemical formulas and timestamps. "What is this?" Shane asked Colton, holding up one of the vials. Colton had gone quiet, his face pale but his jaw set with determination. "I want a lawyer." "You'll get one," Shane said, "after we test these vials and match them to the poison that's put 3 people in the hospital." 3 people? Roderick's voice broke. My food poisoned 3 people? It wasn't your fault, I told him. He used your trust against you. Shane was on his phone, calling for a hazmat team to clear the deli. We need to identify everyone who bought food here this morning. Pull your receipts, check your security cameras, every second counts. Jerry had been standing quietly by the window, but now she spoke up. The Turkey Club for Preston. A roast beef with Swiss for someone named Marcus. And a vegetarian wrap for a woman in a blue coat. Those are the 3 I saw him contaminate this morning. Shane stared at her. You saw all that. When you spend every day in one spot, you learn to pay attention. People think being invisible means you can't see, but it's the opposite. I see everything, because no one sees me. Colton finally spoke, his voice bitter. It was supposed to be controlled. Small doses, documented results. My thesis advisor said I needed real-world data. Your thesis? Shane's voice was ice. You poisoned people for a thesis. It's about undetectable toxins in food service. The doses were calculated to cause symptoms without permanent damage. Without permanent damage? Shane's face went white. He looked at his phone, reading a text that had just come through. Marcus Tillman died 40 minutes ago, father of 2. That's murder, you son of a bitch. The word died hung in the air like another poison, invisible but lethal. Colton's face crumpled, his academic composure shattering completely. No, that's impossible. The dose was calculated precisely. 3 milligrams, it should have only caused mild gastric distress and temporary numbness. You killed someone, Shane said, his voice deadly quiet. Marcus Tillman ate his sandwich in his car while his wife and kids waited. He was dead before the ambulance arrived. I still had my sandwich in my hand, the white paper wrapper now feeling like evidence of my near death. Shane, this needs to be tested. He marked it somehow. Shane took the sandwich with gloved hands, examining the wrapper under the fluorescent lights. There it was, barely visible, a small X drawn in pencil on the bottom corner. Is this how you track them? The marks? Colton had gone silent, but his notebook told the story. Shane flipped through pages of meticulous notes, timestamps, chemical formulas, and a detailed tracking system. Each X corresponded to a specific toxin variant and dosage. My sandwich, according to his notes, contained something called synthetic tetrodotoxin, modified to be undetectable in standard toxicology screens. You weren't just poisoning people, Shane said, reading from the notebook. You were running a controlled experiment. Different toxins, different doses, tracking recovery times and symptoms. It was supposed to advance food safety science, Colton whispered. If we could understand how easily toxins could be introduced and how they manifest, we could prevent real attacks. By conducting real attacks yourself? Roderick had collapsed into a chair, his face gray. I trusted you. I gave you keys to my restaurant. The hazmat team arrived, their white suits making the deli look like a crime scene from a movie. They began bagging everything. Every sandwich, every container of mustard, every cutting board. 30 years of Roderick's reputation being sealed into evidence bags. Shane's phone rang again. He answered, his face growing more grim with each word. 2 more hospitalizations just reported. A woman named Catherine Marsh and a teenager named Devin Williams. Both ate here this morning. Jerry stepped forward. The woman in the blue coat and the kid with the skateboard. I tried to warn them when they left, but they walked faster when I approached. You tried to warn others? I asked her. 3 people before you. The woman crossed the street to avoid me. The teenager put in earbuds. An older man threatened to call the police if I didn't stop harassing customers. She looked at Colton with undisguised contempt. He chose this location perfectly. A corner where someone like me sits, someone everyone ignores. Shane was coordinating with the hospital now, reading from Colton's notebook. We need to tell them exactly what toxins were used. Catherine Marsh got something called batrachatoxin. Devin Williams got a modified ricin compound. He looked at Colton with disgust. You gave a 16-year-old kid ricin? Modified ricin, Colton corrected, as if that made it better. The protein structure was altered to reduce lethality while maintaining symptom presentation. Tell that to Marcus Tillman's wife, Shane snapped. The local news vans were pulling up outside now, their satellite dishes extending like mechanical prayers. Through the window, I could see Jennifer Tillman on the sidewalk, still in the same clothes from this morning, talking to a reporter. Her children stood beside her, the older one holding the younger one's hand. My husband just wanted lunch, she was saying, her voice carrying through the glass. He texted me that he was grabbing a sandwich and would eat in the car. 20 minutes. That's all it took. 20 minutes and he was gone. Colton watched her through the window, and finally, the reality seemed to hit him. I didn't mean for anyone to die. The calculations were precise. I tested the formulas on myself first in microdoses. You tested poisons on yourself? Shane asked. Of course. I'm not a monster. I needed to understand the progression of symptoms. He pulled up his sleeve, revealing small scars on his forearm. Every compound I tried first, but the therapeutic window must have been narrower than I calculated. Maybe Marcus had an underlying condition, or maybe the sandwich sat too long and the compound concentrated. Or maybe, Jerry said quietly, you're just a 22-year-old kid who thought he was smarter than everyone else and played with forces you didn't fully understand. Chemistry isn't just formulas on paper, it's people's lives. The paramedics wheeled someone past the window on a stretcher. Catherine Marsh, conscious but pale, an oxygen mask over her face. She'd survive, Shane's phone confirmed, but would need dialysis for the kidney damage. That's 4 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of murder, Shane said, as the officers prepared to take Colton away. Your thesis just became your life sentence. As they led Colton out, he turned back to look at me. You would have been number 15 in my study. The tetrodotoxin variant you got was my most sophisticated work. You would have felt tingling in your lips first, then paralysis moving from your extremities inward. Your mind would have stayed clear even as your body shut down. Complete respiratory failure in 53 minutes. I looked at the sandwich in the evidence bag, then at Jerry. 53 minutes. Less than an hour between lunch and death, prevented by a homeless woman everyone ignored. 3 weeks later, I stood in a packed courtroom watching Colton receive his sentence. 25 to life for the murder of Marcus Tillman and 4 counts of attempted murder. His thesis advisor from the university sat in the back row, having testified that he'd never approved or even known about Colton's research. The judge called it one of the most callous cases of academic arrogance she'd ever seen. But the real story was sitting next to me in the courtroom. Jerry wore a navy blue suit that the GoFundMe contributors had helped her buy for job interviews. Her hands still trembled from the Parkinson's, but she was taking medication now thanks to the health care that came with her new position at the University of Minnesota. The story had exploded across national news. Homeless professor saves lives became the headline that changed everything. When reporters dug into Jerry's past, they found Dr. Geraldine Hutch, former head of chemical safety studies, who'd lost everything to addiction after her husband's death in 2019. The university that had once employed her reached out within days, offering her a path back through rehabilitation and a position helping with their laboratory safety protocols. The GoFundMe hit $200,000 in 72 hours. People who'd walked past her for months suddenly remembered seeing her there, suddenly felt guilty for every time they'd crossed the street or pretended to be on their phones. You gave me $20, Jerry told me after the sentencing, as we stood outside the courthouse. But more importantly, you gave me dignity. You stopped and listened when everyone else kept walking. My sister Melody was there with her kids, Jasper and Thalia. They'd been doing a school report on everyday heroes, and their teacher had invited Jerry to speak to the class. "Uncle Preston," Thalia asked, "do you still eat at Benson's?" "Every Thursday," I told her. "Roderick makes the sandwiches himself now, no more hiring chemistry students. And Jerry joins me for lunch." Roderick had almost closed the deli after everything happened, but the community had rallied around him. He wasn't responsible for Colton's actions, everyone agreed. If anything, he was another victim. Now he runs background checks on every employee and installed cameras that cover every inch of the kitchen. Jennifer Tillman approached us as we were leaving. Her children hung back, still learning how to exist in a world without their father. "Thank you," she said to Jerry. "My husband's death wasn't in vain because you stopped this monster from killing others. I'm sorry I couldn't save him too," Jerry replied, her eyes filling with tears. "You tried. You warned people. That's more than anyone else did." Later that week, I finally got a job offer. Technova called back, said they'd reconsidered after seeing my name in the news. Turns out being the key witness in a major criminal case and having the clarity to listen to someone others dismissed made them think I had the kind of judgment they wanted on their team. But the real changes were smaller, more personal. Every Thursday, Jerry and I have lunch at Benson's. She tells me about her chemistry students at the community college where she now teaches part-time. She always starts her first lecture of each semester the same way. $20, she says, holding up the bill I gave her which she had framed. That's all it took for one person to see me as human again, and that humanity saved his life and countless others. Chemistry isn't just about compounds and reactions. It's about observation, patience, and understanding that knowledge can come from anywhere, even from someone sitting on a street corner. She keeps her old cardboard sign in her office at the university. Anything helps, God bless. It sits next to her PhD diploma, both equally important parts of her story. Preston's observation became the thing he tells everyone who will listen, and it's the truth that changed his life. Sometimes angels don't have wings. Sometimes they have weathered hands and cardboard signs. They sit in places we don't want to look, seeing things we're too busy to notice. Sometimes salvation comes from the person we almost walked past. The surveillance footage from that day showed the whole truth. 3 people had walked past Jerry's warnings before I stopped. 3 people who could have died because they couldn't imagine wisdom coming from someone who looked like her. Marcus Tillman might still be alive if just one person had listened earlier. Colton's research notes were studied by the FDA and CDC, who used them to develop new detection methods for synthetic toxins. In the darkest possible way, his evil had led to something good, but it was Jerry who'd made that possible. She'd been the one watching, warning, trying to save lives even when no one believed she had anything valuable to say. Every morning now, when I pass someone asking for help, I remember that they see the world from a different angle. They notice things the rest of us miss in our hurry to get somewhere important. Sometimes they're the only ones really paying attention, and sometimes paying attention is the difference between life and death. If this story touched you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below about a time when someone unexpected changed your life, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that remind us all to look closer at the world around us.